In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. In the discussion of knowledge in the philosophy of Avicenna, I explained the accidental nature of mental forms. All mental forms are psych qualities, al-kayf al-nafsani, and thus are accidents. Here Avicenna, without explicitly employing the terminology of primary predication, al-haml al-ula, and common predication, al-haml al-shaya', articulates that although knowledge, ilm, is always an accident in its essence, the object of knowledge, ma'lum, may in its own experimental existence be either a substance or an accident. There are two terms in the Islamic philosophy that Avicenna did not use the term, but used the content. The terms are al-hamlul awwali, primary predication, and al-hamlu shaya, the common predication. What is the meaning of these terms? Let me explain for you. Suppose that I have a knowledge of a book that is in front of me. The book is a substance, not accident. It is substance in the Islamic philosophy. What is the meaning of substance? The substance does not need any subject. For example, the book is substance, but the color of the book is accident. Why? Because color needs a subject. What is the subject? The subject is the book itself. The book is substance, but the color of the book is accident. What is the meaning of substance and accident in the Islamic philosophy? The meaning is that substance does not need any subject, but accident needs a subject. So consider this example. The book is substance, but the color of the book is accident. But this is about the external world. Suppose there is a form of book or form of the color of book in my mind. In both cases, I mean the form of book and the form of the color of the book. In both cases, the form, I mean by form, the knowledge that is in my mind. According to Avicenna, in both cases, the knowledge in my mind is essentially accident. What is the meaning of accident? It means that it is the knowledge, and any sort of knowledge is accident. Why? Because it needs a subject. The subject of knowledge in the philosophy of Avicenna is soul. So the soul is substance, and the knowledge that I have is accident. So here the distinction between al-haml al-awwali, primary predication, and al-haml al-shaya, the common predication, will become clear. What is the distinction? The distinction is that in the primary predication, we note only the mind. So any sort of knowledge that I have, consider these two examples, the knowledge of book and the knowledge of the color of book. Both sorts of knowledge are بالحمل الأولي, in the primary predication, accident. Why? because any sort of knowledge that I have is accident. Avicenna says it is psychic quality. Psychic quality, al-kayfu nafsani. Psychic quality is a sort of accident. So any sort of knowledge that I have about everything in the philosophy of Avicenna is accident. What is the meaning of accident? It means that it is the knowledge that needs a subject. The subject is thought. So here we have primary predication. In the primary predication, we consider something only in our mind. But there is another sort of predication. It is called al-hamlu shaya, the common predication. In the common predication, we don't consider a concept in the mind, but in the external world. For example, in the external world, the color of the book is accident, but the book itself is substance. Let me mention a sentence to make this distinction clear. Suppose this sentence. Book is accident in the primary predication, but substance in the common predication. What is the meaning? The meaning is that when we say the book is accident in the primary predication, it means that in my mind it is a sort of knowledge, and any sort of knowledge is psychic quality and is accident. But when we say the book is substance بالحمل الشایع in the common predication, it means that the reference of the book, I mean the book in the external world. The book in the external world is substance. So here the sentence is meaningful. The book is accident in the primary predication, but is the substance in the common predication. It means that in the external world it is substance, but in my mind, any sort of knowledge is accident. But let me change the example. For example, we can say that the color of the book is accident in both the primary predication and common predication. Why? Because in the external world it is accident, and in my mind any sort of knowledge is accident. Any sort of knowledge, as I mentioned in the philosophy of Avicenna, is called al-kayfu nafsani. Al-kayfu nafsani, the knowledge is a sort of al-kayfu nafsani, a sort of psychic qualities. Psychic qualities means the quality that is related to our minds. And all qualities are accident. So this distinction is important in the Islamic philosophy. The distinction is between different sorts of predication. Avicenna did not use explicitly these terms, the terms al-hamlu al-awwali, primary predication, and common predication. He did not use these terms explicitly. But the content of this distinction exists in his philosophy. Why? Because he says that knowledge is always accident. But the object of knowledge is not always accident. The object of knowledge means its referent, what is existent in the external world. The object of knowledge is sometimes substance and sometimes accident. But the knowledge itself is always accident in the philosophy of Avicenna. So he did not use these terms, al-hamlu al-awwali and al-hamlu al-shaya, But according to his philosophy, the distinction between these two sorts of predications will become clear without using the term explicitly. Knowledge by presence. The term knowledge by presence, al-ilm al-huzuri, was not employed by Avicenna. It appears that Suhrawardi was the first to introduce this terminology. Nevertheless, Avicenna did attend to the reality of knowledge by presence and recognized instances of knowledge that occur without the mediation of mental forms, الصور الذهنية. This includes knowledge of one's own mental forms themselves, which does not require another mental form. Otherwise, an infinite regress would ensue, and self-knowledge, knowledge of one's own essence. As I mentioned in the last session, one of the terms which is used in the Islamic philosophy is knowledge by presence. Avicenna did not use this term, but he accepted the content. I mean that he accepted the content of this sort of knowledge in his philosophy. He explains two sorts of ilm al-huzuri. As I mentioned, he did not use the term, but the content of it in his philosophy exists. He says that there are two sorts of knowledge which are different from other sorts of knowledge. The first one is knowledge of one's own mental forms. For example, suppose that I have a knowledge of a book or a computer in front of me. How do I know the computer? I know the computer with a mediation of a mental form. The mental form of computer exists in my mind. But then another question is that how I know this mental form. How do I know this mental form? The response of Avicenna is that there is no need to any mediation. I know it immediately, directly. It is called knowledge by presence. Avicenna did not use the term, but the content of this term exists in his philosophy. So I have the knowledge of my mental forms, and the knowledge is presented immediately. There is no need to any other form here. If one says that there is need to another form, the result is infinite regress. Why? Because when I know, for example, image of a tree in my mind, then if it needs another form, and that another form needs another form, and that another form needs another form, and it is the conclusion is infinite regress. So we should say that when I know the external world, there is a mediation, the mediation of forms, the mediation of mental image. But when I know the mental image, there is no anything that is immediated. There is no any sort of mediation of mental form. It is direct knowledge, or we can say knowledge by presence, al-ilm al-huzuri. It is one sort of ilm al-huzuri. And another sort of knowledge by presence is self-knowledge. When I know myself, there is no any need to any other sorts of imagination, any sort of form. No, it is direct knowledge. It is knowledge by presence. You know that, for example, in the philosophy of Descartes, he says that I think, therefore I am. But in the philosophy of Avicenna, we should say that I am without any need to any reason, any need to any argument. Why? Because it is knowledge by presence. I am, in the philosophy of Avicenna, we should say that I am, and I understand that I am immediately, without any need to any sort of mediation of mental forms. So Avicenna, without using the term of knowledge by presence, but he accepts this distinction and mentions two examples for knowledge by presence. In the next session, I will explain the particular and universal perceptions in the philosophy of Avicenna.